All right, so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. We are starting chapter 2, the ancient Near East. So this is a reminder that in the header on the next empty page of your sketchbook, write chapter 2, big and bold. And for each page of chapter 2 notes that you take, I want you to write chapter 2 at the top. And you can write chapter 2, you can write ancient Near East, you can write Mesopotamia. And then this is also a reminder that there are 5 hand-drawn sketches per chapter. I'll be grading that at the end of the unit. So make sure that you did your 5 quick sketches for chapter 1. This chapter was kind of a big one, so I divided it up into parts. So we are looking for the Middle East. Where is the Middle East on this map? It's also called West Asia. It's kind of right in the center of the map. It includes Egypt and the area just to up to the upper right of Egypt. But this is generally considered to be the Middle East. All right, so we get closer. I want you guys to know what the Fertile Crescent is. All right, this is Mesopotamia. And the word Mesopotamia is Greek for the land between 2 rivers. That's the Euphrates River and the Tigris River. What does fertile mean? Right, able to give birth. And in this case, the fertile land gives birth to food and vegetation. What's a crescent? That's right. It's the moon at the end of the cycle, all right? It's a croissant roll that you eat. They're so delicious. All right, so we have this crescent shape of this fertile land. And with the Nile, when we get into Egypt, all the vegetation is centered around the Nile. And so it's the water that's giving life to the desert. All right, Mesopotamia is the birthplace of the first major civilizations. This is a continuation of the revolution of the Neolithic. The humans are continuing to evolve from hunter gatherers to farmers and herders. So, the first civilization that we are going to look at is Sumerian. And Sumerian, or Sumer, is the area located real close to the Persian Gulf. It's the part in purple. And here's another map showing you where Sumer is. This is in modern day Iraq. And the word Sumer means land of the black headed people. And it's a collection of city states. Right next to Sumer is Akkad, where the Akkadians are from. We'll look at them later. But Sumer started in this small area, and then after a while, it conquered most of Mesopotamia. And the Sumerians are responsible for 39 firsts. They are the first people to create civilization. They are the first kingdom, the first empire, the first city states, the first democracy. They made the first schools, the first library catalog, the first organized religion. They're the first at lawmaking, the first literature, the first wheel and plow. They were able to control floods with irrigation and canals. And they had the first jobs. This is the first time that everybody wasn't about gathering food. In a civilization, you could then specialize. Some people focused on the animals. Some people focused on farming. Some people made boats. Some people made tools. Some people built houses. And that is totally new in the world. They had developed and specialized so much that only a small percentage of citizens were working on agriculture and feeding the people. The others could specialize in other community roles. And like I said, there are numerous city states within Sumer. All right, now, what's the difference between prehistory and history? What does history have that prehistory doesn't? That's right. And with Sumerian, we're going to talk about cuneiform. This is how they kept records. Now, the cool thing is that this is the first writing in the world. The boring thing is that they use this writing to keep receipts. So these are records of how many bushels of wheat were sold, who bought it, when, and stuff like that. So as people learn how to read cuneiform, that's the stuff they're reading. They're reading logbooks. Anyway, so how do they make this cuneiform? What tools do they use? Well, they take reeds and they cut the reeds apart. And as you cut the reeds apart, you have these sharp edges. And you can see them using the tools in these artworks where they're holding the tools and a piece of clay, and you can see that they are showing people writing. And you can use one part of the tool will draw lines in a wet piece of clay, and then you turn it around to have this wedge shape, and you can press that and it makes this triangular shape in the clay. All right, cuneiform was created out of necessity. Sumerian cities were complex. They had a complex form of government, and it was important to keep records. Thus, writing was invented in the form of cuneiform. And one of my favorite memes. World's oldest known joke book comes from the Sumerians. It dates back from around 1900 BC and before the golden age of Babylon, and it's actually more a list of riddles. Some of them are funny, some are clever, and some are just plain hard to make sense of. So here's an example. So the question is, what's something that never occurred since time immemorial? And the answer is, a young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. So that's basically the idea that when you're first dating somebody, you don't fart in front of each other. But when you've been dating a long time or after you've been married a long time, then you are comfortable enough with each other that you can fart in each other's presence. So, first fart jokes, Sumerians. All right. And then another joke is, who is it that has intercourse with your mother? So, the Sumerians also created the first yo mama joke. All right, now, why are there 60 seconds on a clock? The Sumerians invented that. And it's because of all the different digits on your fingers. So each finger is divided up into three. So you have 12 for your fingers. And then you can put your thumb down, that counts as 12. And then you have 12 more for each finger. And that's how you get to 60. Who invented 360 degrees of a circle? The Sumerians did that. So you can thank them for your geometry class. All right, moving on. So let's take a look at their architecture. We're going to go to Uruk, and this is the city of Uruk, what they think it would have looked like back then. Had a population of 40,000. And we are going to look at the White Temple and Ziggurat. All right, it's a white temple on top of the Anu Ziggurat. It was dedicated to the sky god Anu. It's made of mud bricks, which is rare, and it has whitewashed walls. We'll look at it, the inside of it, in just a second. So, I know what you're thinking. I bet you're wondering, what is a ziggurat? So this is a ziggurat. Ziggurats are made of mud brick. In the Middle East, stone is rare. So they are basically making mud and forming it into bricks and letting it sun dry in the sun. This is usually in the center of a city, and the temple is the nucleus of every city. And temples are called houses of the mountain. The temples are the bond between heaven and earth. So, as the people pray to the gods, they think the gods are up in the sky. Well, of course, you're going to build a temple that's closer to the gods so you can reach them better. And the gods, if they want to talk to the people, it's easier to talk through the temple that is raised because it's closer to them. So the temple is the interaction, or it's almost like the telephone between two people. So it's the line of communication. All right, so a ziggurat is a high platform above street level. It's oriented to the cardinal points. Do you know what the cardinal points are? North, south, east, west. That is correct. This tells experts that the Sumerians had a theocratic rule. They were a theocracy. So, what kind of government is that? Ruled by religion. So, the leader, the high leader, was also the religious leader. Kind of the Pope being in charge of Rome back in the day. And once again, the goal was to be closer to the gods. And so the leader, the priest king, would go into the temple and talk to the gods on behalf of his people. And the gods would talk to the priest king, and he would come out from the temple on top of the ziggurat and tell everybody what the gods are saying, right? If you want to know why there's no rain, why we can't have crops, let's go ask the gods. And the priest king would go in and talk to the gods, and the gods would tell him why, and he would come out and tell us why there's no rain. All right, it's because you haven't been sacrificing enough, or something of that nature. All right, and you guys know Spice Girls? They wrote a song about a ziggurat. I bet you didn't know the Spice Girls were so interested in Mesopotamia. But listen carefully to the lyrics. Listen. So you hear that? They want a ziggurat, all right? So Spice Girls sing about it, therefore it is cool. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this white temple and ziggurat. Here is an illustration of what it would have looked like. This is one of the first ziggurats that they found. And then this is the white temple that is above. It's quite a simple temple. Ah, that rhymes. So if you look inside, there is an altar area, and this gives you a sense of how large it was. You can see the figure right there. The interior space, or the central hall of a temple, is called a cella. And we're going to be coming back to that again and again this semester. This is what the White Temple and ziggurat look like today. This looks like a hill, right? So it's when they do excavations that they find out how it was built. And these ziggurats, they're solid. It's not an empty room. That is absolutely solid all the way up. All right. And then it's the temple at the top that has a room in it. This is solid, and then that temple has the room on the inside. Moving on to Sumerian sculpture. Our first object is the Warka vase. So this is a vase. It's a cylindrical form, and it's hollow on the inside, but it has images around the outside. And the Sumerians were the first to use pictures to tell a coherent story, and this is the object that tells that story. The Warka vase is the first great work of narrative relief sculpture, and it depicts an ancient religious festival in the Inanna complex. It's a fertility festival, but it's a fertility of the harvest. All right, and I want to introduce this art history term to you. It's called register. A register is a horizontal level in a work of art that consists of several levels arranged one above the other. So I've drawn on this picture with these red to show the different levels. So there's a bottom line down here, and then here's some pictures. Then there is this open space with no pictures. Then there are some people here. Then there's some open space, and there's some people up here. And then we have the top up here. All right. This set of pictures at the top is the top register. The one in the middle is the middle register. The one at the bottom is the lower register. So I'm going to be using this word register quite a few times this semester. And so when I talk about register, now you know what it means. So let's take a look at this lower register. What do you see in the lower register? Crops and animals. That is correct. So there's rams, you can see the horns, and sheep. There's barley and flax down here. And then there's this water right here. All right, the animals are in profile. But there's a new term I also want to give you guys is a ground line. Groundline. And all these animals are on a ground line. You ever, like when you're in elementary school, drew a picture of a house and you drew the ground line, and then everything, the house, the tree, the people, they were all standing on that line? That's a ground line. All right, and so here's the wheat and the barley, or the flax. All right, then we look at the middle register. If we look at it a little bit closer, there's naked men carrying baskets and jars overflowing with food. This is a votive offering. And if we get closer, all right, votive, V-O-T-I-V-E, it should be up here. But votive means that it's an offering to a god. Anybody have votive candles in your house? It's an offering. It's religious. Here we have a compound view of the figures. Their legs are at a side view, and their heads are at a side view, but their hips are at a front view, and their chest is at a front view. And their eyes it's frontal eyes on a profile head. And then if we look at the top of the vase, we have a female figure in a tall headdress. Art historians can't figure out if that is Inanna or if it is a priestess. And then the offerings are being placed in the temple. And the other thing, a couple other things I want to show you guys. All right, so on the far left, that's the priest king. This guy's a priest. This is either Inanna or a priestess, sorry. Her name is as a pictograph right here. And then I also want you to notice how these people are really small over here. We'll get to that in a second. All right, so that is the Warka vase. Next, I want to show you guys the statuettes of perpetual worshipers. These figures are found buried under the floor of a temple, and they are placed there for a religious purpose. And these are votive figures. A votive is a type of offering to the gods. These figures are mortals, not deities, and they are in the act of prayer. What makes them look like they are praying? Yeah, their hands. Hands being clasped as a symbol of prayer. And it's very possible some of these figures are holding cups for a libation. A libation is a liquid offering to the gods. Now, what part of the anatomy do you think is weird about them? Yes, the eyes. Why are the eyes so big? All right, the eyes are big because it symbolizes eternal wakefulness. They are waiting for the gods. They are looking over the gods. They are protecting the gods, and they are watching the gods, and they are responding to the gods. So they have to be eternally awake. These are not generic statues. They are meant to depict real people because there are inscriptions that identify the person that it is meant to be. So inscribed on the base of them is the name of the person. There's male and female figures. Males with beards is a sign of wisdom. And the females have the dress draped over one shoulder. And the massive eyes, they are disproportionate. Again, that's that eternal watchfulness. And that is watching for the god to show up, or it could be in the presence of a god, you have been awakened. They have been spiritually awakened. All right, I want you to know what a stele is. Stele. It's a stone slab carved to commemorate an event or to mark a grave. Do we have steles in our culture? What do we call them? Yes, gravestone. Steles show up all over the world. And what I think is interesting is that all these cultures are not necessarily connected to each other. Yes, Greece and Egypt are right across the Mediterranean Sea from each other. Yes, Greece and Egypt share a lot of history together. However, over in the Americas, these people are developed totally independent of Mesopotamia and Europe, and they make steles as well. So these are different city states at war with each other. There's alliances, and then alliances get broken and they go to war with each other. But we know that battles in the ancient world happened. But we don't know the details or why they happened. Kingdoms traded with each other. Sometimes they fought against each other. Sometimes they teamed up against one. And we can guess they usually fought over farmland or access to water sources. So in this case, Umma broke a treaty between the two with Lagash. Yeah, with Lagash. They had a war and Lagash won. So this is called the stele of the vultures, and it's about that war. Now the stele is highly fragmented. There's only a few pieces left of it. And what we're looking at is the same stones. We're seeing the front and the back of it. It looks like it had a round top to it with straight sides, like an upside down U. The stele was erected as a monument to the victory of King Eananum of Lagash over Ush, king of Umma. It's the earliest known war monument. There's two sides to the same stele. One side is historical and or terrestrial. The other side is mythological or divine. So I think we are going to look at the historical side first. Up here on the upper left, you can see all these little circles right there. These are the heads of soldiers, and they have their shields in front of them, and they have their spears facing out towards our right, with the king leading in front of them. And then this red line here is the register. And down here, there is another register. And then, like I just described, there we go. There's the soldiers. The soldiers march in uniform, trampling bodies of the enemy before them. They march as a single unit, and the spears are poking out from their shields. And so, this is what historians think that they would have looked like. In the upper right are the Umma soldiers. They are disorganized and fleeing before the Lagash army. You can see barely kind of make out the bodies, but they are, you can see some are running, and then many are dead and piled up. And like I said, it is disorganized. But at the very top, this is what the stele is named after, these vultures. And these vultures are carrying off the heads and arms of the soldiers of Umma. So you can see there's a head here, and there's an arm here. They're flying away with body parts. There's another head here. And then in this section, this is the mythological section, or the side. There's a large male figure holding a mace in one hand. That's the mace. And he's holding an anzu in his left hand. And below the anzu is a large net filled with the bodies of naked men. And behind this figure stands a smaller female figure wearing a horned headband with a mace, with maces protruding from her shoulders. Anyways, I bet you're wondering what an anzu is, right? What's an anzu that he's holding? This is an anzu. All right, so that figure right there is Ningirsu, who is the god of war, and he's holding an anzu, which is a lion-headed eagle. There it is. And then, does this remind you of anything? This, like this image right here? Does that look like anything that you know? It reminds me of the dollar bill, right? The way the wings are, and then we have the legs coming out down here. And okay, moving on. We're going to go to Ur. And what is a standard? It's like a symbol that they carry when they go into war. Eventually, standards turned into a flag. So if you're on the battlefield, and these ancient battlefields are very chaotic, there's a lot of, like when they blow trumpets, that has a certain meaning. You have to do one thing: you advance, or you stop, or you retreat. And if you see, there's different flags, and if you know, you can follow the flag of your division, so that's where you know where to go. Or, and so in this case, it would be standards. All right, so Romans would march in with standards. Later on in history, they would use flags, and the enemy would try to take the flag. Anyways, the enemy would try to capture the flag or take the flag, and that's the flag. When it's waving, it gives your troops hope. And when you see that the enemy has your flag, you know you are in trouble. So we're going to take a look at the standard of Ur. It's called the standard of Ur because art historians thought it was a standard, but nobody really knows. It's a box of uncertain function. Some think it's a musical instrument. Some think it's a war chest. and others think it probably wasn't a standard at all. But this photo gives you a sense of the size of it. So this is the object that we're looking at. We'll get a little bit closer. What do you call these things right here? Registers. Very good. And even there's registers on the sides. All right. And if we take a close look at what this is made of, these the lighter parts are inlaid shell. Can you tell what the blue parts are? I heard it. Lapis lazuli. Do you guys use that a lot in Minecraft? Yeah. So last year, everybody knew what lapis lazuli was because they played Minecraft. All right. Now, lapis lazuli comes from Afghanistan. The red limestone that is in this standard of ore comes from India, and the shells are come from Ur. This shows that Ur traded with a lot of other civilizations. On this standard of ore, there's two sides. There's a side of peace and there's a side of war. And it's possible that these are the first and second parts of the same narrative. Even though they're two different stories, they could be two different parts of the same story. So let's take a look at the side of war first. So we've got these registers, and we'll take a look at the bottom register first. What are these things? Yes, they're chariots being pulled along by these horses, or possibly even donkeys. Chariots kill the enemy and they increase the gait as they go from left to right. Look right here, the horses are just walking. And look here, the horses are a little bit more animated. And look, there's a dead enemy underneath them. And the horses are a little bit more animated, and there's dead people being run over. And then over here, the horse is at a full gallop, and we have dead people underneath. And this is an artist's view of what the chariots would have looked like. A little bit different than the Greek chariots. Here's another view. And if we get a little bit closer, it gets a little bit crazier. And then that's the last one. All right. On the middle register, we have soldiers on the left and prisoners of war on the right. So look at the soldiers and look how uniform they are on the left. And again, this is what artists think they would have looked like. If we look closely at the soldiers that are in here, notice that they are very uniform. I want to point out again the twisted perspective. Look at the eyes up there. All right, it's a frontal view of the eye, but a profile view of the face. That is twisted perspective. The shoulders face us. In fact, I think there's a slide coming up where that shows this much better. But the shoulders are frontal. The legs are side. It is a twisted perspective. All right, and here's what I'm talking about with that twisted perspective. And most people recognize this as like an Egyptian style, where once again, the head is in profile, the eye is on forward, the shoulders are forward, the hips and the legs are profile. So if we look at like the chest is profile, and the chest is frontal, and the head and the hips to the legs to the feet are all in profile, and that's what we got going on here. Like we're in the middle register, and in the middle of it there's a battle taking place, and I think it's is it still the Lamash? Our guys and their guys. So our guys are conquering their guys. Our soldiers are standing upright and their soldiers are falling over. Our guys have armor and swords and shields and helmets, and their guys are naked. And then over on the right side of the middle register, we have our soldiers leading their soldiers off, and many of them are disrobed or nude. So if we go back here on the left side are our soldiers, and then there's the battle, and then their soldiers are going off the battle disrobed and in shame. All right, so let's go back up to the top register. All right, and on the top register, over on the left side, we have a chariot being pulled by either horses or donkeys. And then we have, see, these don't quite look like soldiers anymore. So I think these are priests. And here we have a tall guy, and then some more. And then over here on this side, the enemy soldiers being presented before the king. And then I want you to look at this guy right here. What's different about him? Yes, he's taller. He's so tall that he breaks outside the barrier of the whole scene. If this was a comic book, all right, this would be a black line around the scene, and then he would be on the outside of it. He is taller than everybody else. Why is he taller than everybody else? He's more important. That is correct. And that term is called hierarchical proportion. We will get to it in just a minute. Here's a close-up view of this tall dude. And if anybody's ever seen the movie 300, all right, Xerxes was a tall leader. But what I love about this movie is they really show, I think they exaggerated the height of the leader. This right here is a good example. This movie is highly stylized and not so realistic. Yes, this was a real battle. It really did happen. Yes, a small number of Spartans fought off a large number of Persians. Yes, their leader was tall, but this is exaggerated. What I like about this is that I think the animators of the show, the artists of the show, looked at or made a reference to these hierarchical proportions in ancient art, where more important people are seen as taller. All right, here's the term that I want you to write down. It's called hierarchical proportion. It's also called hierarchic scale. It's also called hierarchic size. I'm going to let you choose which term you want to write down for your notes. Can you tell what culture this artwork comes from? Egyptian, yeah. We have this tall dude, and then we have the small people around him, all right? And this is not a man and his children. This is a child, and that's his wife right there. His wife is so much smaller because he is important. What culture do you think this comes from? Africa, that's right. And the king in the middle is taller than those around him because he is so much more important. All right, it happens in Asia as well. Right? Homeboy's a giant with a big giant smile on his face. All right, everybody else is smaller than him. The reason why is that he is so important. This happens in many different cultures to show who is important and who is not. All right. And once again, they're bringing prisoners of war to the king. But we're on the side of peace now. All right. So there's three different registers right here, here, and here. And the bottom section, these are the laborers. You can see people carrying things on their back. We see beasts of burden that are being led. And then over here, we have some more laborers. We have people bringing animals in. And then at the top are the elites. And who is the most important elite? Yeah, the tall one, this one right here on the left side. Oh, yeah, registers, all right. He is keeping everybody entertained, yeah. The question is, what labor did Waldo do? All right. Men are carrying provisions, and art historians are wondering if this is war booty or possibly a bountiful harvest. If it's war booty, then this could be part two of the other side. So the other side was war, this side is peace, and after war comes peace. So it could be two parts of the same story, or it could be two different ideas. So at the bottom section, we'll get men bringing animals, fish for a banquet. And the banquet is at the top of the top register. It's the king and musician. And they're also wondering, is this a victory celebration after the battle? All right. And in the middle register, they have more things. Bringing animals. And we got this guy carrying fish. And I just thought it was funny because that guy's hands are going to smell bad later on. All right, and then at the top we have a banquet of the king, and there are musicians there. And once again, it's wondering, is this a victory celebration? And you can tell the tall dude right there is the ruler, the king, because he is bigger than everybody else. Even seated, he is taller than those that are standing around him. And then also look at what he is holding in his hand. They have found cups from the site that the standard of Ur was found. So the thing that he's holding is found at the same place where this was found, the whole standard of Ur. And we have servants here on the left and high officials or elites on the right. And then we have musicians over here on the right side. Most likely a lyre player and a singer. Now, notice the shape of this. All right, it's what do you call a four-sided shape like this? Is it trapeze? All right, thank you very much. All right, it's been a long time since I've had geometry. The 80s. All right, so and then it has this bull's head on the front, and that is similar to this that's been found at a site nearby. You guys know the song "School's Out for Summer"? All right. Yeah. Well, Alice Cooper is mispronouncing it. It's "School's Out for Sumer." Right. So he's talking in that song. He's singing about Mesopotamia. I want you to know what gold leaf is. We're going to be talking about gold leaf throughout this semester. These are very thin sheets of gold used for decoration. So when you go to an art museum and you might stand in front of an image like this, it looks like gold paint. They painted on it with liquid gold, like or paint that is the color of gold. That's not true. They didn't paint it. They just covered it with a thin sheet of actual gold. So in this illustration on the right, you have a guy he's holding a little jar of glue, and in his other hand he has these looks like tweezers and is holding a thin sheet of gold leaf, and he has a box of gold leaf right here. And then you can see that the image that he is painting on or attaching the gold leaf to, the orangey bit is the part that hasn't had the gold leaf attached yet. And this is what it looks like in a photograph. Gold is a very unique substance. And the reason why people like gold, not only because it's shiny and pretty, but it can hold together very thin. You can make very thin strips of gold and pieces of gold, and it still carries its shape. Excuse me. This guy's making a gold leaf frame. So he has the frame and he's putting gold leaf on top of it. And it's going to look like a solid gold frame at the end, but really it's just a thin sheet of gold. It's been said that the gold leaf, they've made gold leaf that is 1 atom thick. Right? That sounds insane, but when I mentioned this fact, other people said, yes, I've heard that too. They take gold and they make it extremely thin, and then it can cover more area. So I once went to a gold exhibit at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and they had this little tiny fleck of, or like a nugget of gold, and they had this small closet, and the small closet was wallpapered with gold leaf made from that tiny little nugget of gold. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video. It's a 3-minute video of how they make gold leaf. Oh, it's made in the 50s. It's very dated, but it gives you an appreciation of how gold leaf is made.
Now put to its most artistic use, the beating and rolling of bars of gold, each one worth 1,000 pounds, into the shearer's gold leaf. At this factory in Riceley, Middlesex, first stage is the casting of the gold bar. Most of us would be perfectly happy with just a bar of the stuff, but because of its brilliance of effect and remarkable durability, gold is put to more practical uses. And that gold bar we saw, after being beaten by hammer, is now rolled with increasing pressure into a ribbon 300 feet long and 1/1000th of an inch thick, and then cut into squares. This is an industry that goes back to the earliest times. In fact, gold beating by the Egyptians of 2,000 to 3,000 BC can still be seen untarnished and unbroken on mummy cases in the British Museum. Craftsmanship is still the key factor, and techniques haven't changed much, except that today gold is beaten to 1/10 the consistency of ancient times, believe it or not, to 4 millionths of an inch. From original gold bar to the finished leaf takes 7 stages, involving several quartering and beating processes, so eventually laid side by side, the leaves from one bar would cover over 9,000 square feet. Every process requires skill of the highest order, but experts like the machine hammer foreman can check thickness from sight alone. Notice, by the way, that the leaves are protected by skins of vellum, specially made from the intestines of an ox, and the whole lot enclosed in bands of parchment, making what is called a niche. Work in every aspect of gold leaf is so precise and delicate that a hare's foot is used for powdering or cleaning the protective skins, which, because of their strength and resilience, are more valuable than the gold leaf they hold for beating. They're even smelled from time to time to check their condition, which varies in different. Strange as it seems, the traditional skill of hand beating is no slower than the mechanized way, and considerably more precise. A man has to be apprenticed for several years before he's considered expert, and 77-year-old Joe Woodward has been doing it for 63, and using the same hammer.
They can't even touch it with their hands.
The finished leaf is cut into 3.5-inch squares, not by knife, because the gold in this stage would stick to steel, but by sharpened bamboo. The leaf is now ready for use. Outdoors on landmarks like the cross on the dome of St. Paul's and the gates of Buckingham Palace, and inside in such arts as gilding picture frames. Altogether, a remarkable transformation. Gold leaf, less than a wavelength of light in thickness, a little known but true. All
right, so I hope that gives you an appreciation for gold leaf. It's trendy for a fancy dessert. You can eat gold leaf. The gold leaf on your food is so thin that it has very little monetary value, or it's not like you can take it to the gold exchange and sell it for lots of money. Anyways, gold leaf, everybody. I taught you that so I could show you this artwork right here. The bull's head is gold leaf. And it is this part that is the original of this lyre. The rest of it is reconstructed. What kind of animal is this? Oh, yeah, it says in the title. Yeah, bull. But notice the beard, right? Why does the bull have a beard? It's the same instrument that we saw in our last artwork, and there are 4 different versions of this bull-headed lyre. And they're in 4 different museums. One of them is silver. These other 2, these are reconstructions. And this one is just the original part. Anyways, yeah, beards, especially in the ancient world, commemorate like wisdom or virility, like manliness and strength. Bulls are a symbol of strength. It is a wood head covered in gold leaf, and underneath it has inlay, which it has composite figures. That means human and animal mixed together. And art historians wondering, are these creatures from the afterlife? All right, so what's unusual about these creatures? Yeah, they have people faces. Look at that. Also, it's unusual to have a frontal face in artwork at this time. Mostly it is a profile view. But this is an image of a bearded man controlling 2 bearded bulls. So this is the traits of the king. This says the king is strong. Like I said, bull is a symbol of strength. It's unusual to have a forward facing portrait or a face. Most ancient depictions of heads are a profile depiction. All right, the next one down. I just think it's weird. We have a dog wearing a dagger and carrying a table, followed by a lion bringing beverages. And art historians think that the message is that king rules not just over the city, but at nature itself. And each of these animals may represent a virtue or an ability in man. Like a dog would be a symbol of loyalty, and a lion, courage. And then we have a bear, which is unusual in ancient art, and a donkey playing a lyre. Look at, he's playing a lyre, the same lyre that this is a part of. Like it is what it shows that it is. And then we have this scorpion guy. And it could be the message is that this guy is somebody you don't want to mess with. And it just reminded me of the Scorpion King movie that everybody makes fun of. It's a bad movie. And the gazelle is bringing goblets. Are there any questions about Sumerian art?